Fergalicious Fergalicious definition. Make them boys go to the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three hosts oversee the world of comics. I'm Alessandro, and I'm joined, as usual, by Patrick.
Hey.
And Joe.
Good. Hey, Al. How's it going? Hey, Patty.
Hey, Joe.
All right. Anyway, people of the world, welcome to the Mobius Couch.
World.
Tonight, we're going to talk about Moon Knight.
Spice up your life? Yeah, Moon Knight, but not the Disney Plus show. We're talking about some comics this time around.
The comic character Moon Knight. Which is interesting. I'd never really read a Moon Knight comic before, and it's a little bit bananas. So I have some hot takes, I guess.
This is kind of a. I think that's sort of the case with all of us, right?
Yeah, I mean, outside of him like making weird guest appearances and like the big Marvel crossover events, I knew nothing about him.
Yeah,
and actually, with Alessandro, there's a lot going on with this character.
Yeah, and so we're going to go over two runs. One is a more recent Jeff Lemire or Lemire run, whichever way you pronounce it. And the other one is by Warren Ellis, who is a Never Meet Your Heroes all-star, apparently. But Patrick has a little bit more info on that. But those are the two runs we'll be talking about. So we're going to start with the Ellis run because that came out first chronologically. Patrick, why don't you take us away?
Well, yeah, I guess caveat is we read this in preparation for this episode. I wasn't really aware of the accusations that have been levied against Ellis. He is denying them. They sound pretty bad.
It also sounds pretty true. Like, it doesn't seem like it's like, of course he's denying it, is my point,
So there's several women that have come forward saying that, he groomed them and things of that nature, and he's denying it. So if you want to know more about it, it's all out there from the research.
Yeah, I guess the key here is that we are going to talk about the run. Although, like, basically, if I've heard other people, I was kind of telling Patty this, but like off camera, but like the impression I got was like, by all means, read this story arc, but just don't buy it. Like, don't give this guy any money, kind of thing. Like, it wasn't like he's a human piece of garbage. Like, don't read his arc. It was, or if you want to know about Moon Knight, it's just like, just don't give this guy any money. How about that? Like, find it for free somewhere. But yeah. Anyway, moving on from that dark note, I guess we just wanted to talk about it or address it before we started talking about the comic.
We're recording this after the first Disney Plus episode of Moon Knight came out, and I saw that he wasn't credited, but some of the other writers and artists were, and that's when I texted y'all, and Joe said he was canceled, and I didn't really realize the extent of what he'd been up to. But anyways,
you're just like, Ellis wasn't credited, and I was like, he's canceled. Move it. I was actually watching the episode when you said that. That's why I was like, he's canceled, and I just put my phone down, so I didn't respond beyond that.
But Warren Ellis is very, very much entwined into the Moon Knight character the way we know Moon Knight currently. So Moon Knight is a character. He's been around since the 1970s, but he's most known as kind of being a Batman amalgam in a way.
Kind of why I never read him. Like, I'm a huge Batman fan, so to me it was like, what's the point of this? Sort of why this is all new to me. Like, as many comics as we have all read, like, this is one of those that I'm just like, eh.
So aside from just Moon Knight being a really just bananas character whose other personalities are a cab driver, a billionaire, like TV producer, and a mercenary.
And a mercenary,
strange mix. And he also has like a gallery of assistants, including like a Frenchman, and
I think he just like so that's the thing, like a lot of that goes into the deep history stuff, and we don't know enough about it to like speak on it or like why that would make sense or where they come from. So it's kind of hard to
but it's just sort of a weird, the cast is just a strange mix, but but this Ellis run doesn't have kind of a through line, like an A plot narrative. It's just standalone issues.
They're little one issue shots.
Which I thought for that sort of worked as kind of a don't think about it, enjoy the action, kind of here's a different bad guy. The second issue which is all about sort of a sniper trying to kill people who betrayed the sniper. And then the whole issue is just sort of Moon Knight fighting the sniper with very little dialogue. And I actually kind of liked that. I thought it was sort of a cool
I liked that too. I liked that issue a lot. It was the one of, or the only one, where he was actually in the superhero costume. I think most of it was Mr. Knight, right?
Most of it's Mr. Knight. I know at least in the episode with the guy with the shrooms in his brain, he's in both.
Yeah, that's Mr. Knight. Ghost Gang is Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight's the first one.
Who did the art on that issue? I really enjoyed that.
I think it's somebody named Declan Shalvey did the whole thing.
Yeah, he did.
I don't really know his art. I don't know where he comes from, or
he did a cool.
It's very Eduardo Riso from 100 Bullets. If you guys picked up on that,
never read that. Never read 100 Bullets.
Oh, that's a shame. It's a good book.
But I liked what he did with the transitions in the panels, because Moon Knight's cape is white, and he would kind of use it like as the page.
Yeah.
Kind of diagonally meeting into the panel to become his cape. I thought stuff like that was kind of neat.
Yeah, especially the stuff with his cape. I mean, there's what you just said. There's one panel where Moon Knight is in his kind of Batman costume. He's going across the sky, and the cape takes up like
and the guy shoots his cape, and it's like hold up, and then he jumps down below. You know? The sniper, talking about little dialogue, when they say, he's like, why can't I hit you, and he's like, I'm not real. I was like, I love that little bit of like the only words he says out loud is just like, I'm not real, and while they're in the middle of a fight, that's his only response. It was pretty cool. So I liked it.
I do like some of the. I mean, I know we already talked about Warren Ellis is a shitty guy. I did like some of the writing. Like, I think he had one line, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, "Oh, I died once, but I didn't like it, so I stood up," or something like that. It was kind of a neat turn of phrase to say it that way. I kind of liked some of the writing and like Marc's character in Ellis's run. I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I will say two things. The fact that they have it set up issue by issue, it tells a different story. I think that lends itself to the character better, because he's this crazy person, and when you follow him issue by issue, there's no cohesive story that the writer has to tell. They're like, let's just tell a really strange story. And with the Lemire run that we're going to cover, it's more of a cohesive story, and Moon Knight is acting more like a rational person. So with the Ellis issue, he comes off way crazier to me.
It almost doesn't seem like he's having a conversation with the same person that he's talking to.
Right. It's kind of this sensation that it's difficult for him to directly communicate with other people. Which is sort of interesting given the DID backstory, that he is multiple people, but he doesn't seem to be on the same plane as different.
Well, another thing I really enjoy about my favorite line of Moon Knight is that he dresses in white because he likes the villains to see him coming. And that's a very, very stark contrast to Batman, where Batman is the shadows, whereas Moon Knight is out in the open.
They made a Batman made a reference to that once with the yellow oval in Al's favorite comic book of all time, The Dark Knight Returns.
Classic. I mean, anything.
And he references it as a target. Like, the reason the yellow is there is because it's a target and draws fire to like his body armor. Like people would, if they were shooting at him, they would see the yellow and shoot at the yellow, and that's where his protection is mostly, or whatever.
Just genius. But same idea. Construct there by Frank Miller.
Just a quick note that Batman did it first. That's all I'm saying.
A quick note that Frank Miller's a hack who's never written anything worth reading.
Except for what I just talked about. We're going to argue about this for all.
This run, each issue did end relatively abruptly. Like, the issue with the sniper ends with the sniper's friend coming off, or his ex-colleague coming off the elevator.
Just opening the elevator. Yeah.
And he just says the banks always win. And Moon Knight's like, okay. And then, like, the ghost episode.
He's like, all right, see you later. Sounds like we wrapped this one up.
Each issue there was no resolution to any issue, which again kind of just lends itself to the just craziness of this character. I think that's why the Ellis's run, you have more freedom issue by issue to make. It's easier to make the characters sound or seem crazy. Whereas the Lemire run, Marvel, I think, wanted him to tell a cohesive story, so you have to have the guy using some rationality.
Wait, I'm still on the sleep issue. I love when he wakes up and just immediately is like, and like runs into the other room and just starts beating the crap out of the sleep doctor because he's the one who like. Did he kill the patient, or did the patient just die and he hid the body or something? I didn't.
Actually, I don't remember. I think he was the reason the patient died, right?
I think the patient had some sort of underlying disorder he was unaware of that caused like a bad reaction with the drug. So technically, he didn't mean to, but he killed him and then he just hid the body. But I mean, that issue was traumatizing. It was my favorite issue because it's creepy and how much it got under my skin. Because when he finds the dead guy's body, there's the mushrooms growing out of his brain. There's the rats all over his body. I mean, Declan Shalvey's art is pretty great. I really enjoyed it. That issue is in particular. Issue
before
5.
you. All right, go ahead.
No, what are you gonna say?
We just need to cycle. I want to circle back to issue 1, but only because of the dissociative identity disorder.
We can't use business talk here.
Circle back.
Circle back is business talk.
That's a bit. Yeah, it's a business talk. Just say, I want to talk about X. Just say what you mean, Joe. Just say what you mean.
Well, since we're about to talk about 5, I'd like to go back to the beginning and talk about 1 real quick before we keep moving on. The issue itself is okay. I mean, he one, it introduces Mr. Knight, but he goes and he's like helping a cop and he goes underground and it is really badass that he ends the fight before it starts by bouncing that, I guess batarang off the wall, whatever he calls them. But he just throws a batarang the second he walks in the room. And then that was in a specific place in the guy's body. And then as they're talking, they start fighting and and then he's like, I already won just 5 minutes ago. But at the end, he's talking to a psychologist. And she specifically says you don't have DID.
I read the entire run on this one. And it's odd because Warren Ellis's issues are all one-offs. And then the one right after this, I forget who the writer is. He has a cohesive story with the therapist. She's working. She ends up stealing.
So this circles back around.
Yeah, and it's weird because the middle part of this run is a cohesive story, and then it switches writers again, and he goes back to this format where it's all one-offs, and those are actually pretty good as well. I think his name is Cullen something. But yeah, if you were gonna read any, those are.
So the therapist ends up being one of the Egyptian avatars or something, and wasn't telling the truth, or
she's just aware that Khonshu is real and that he has 4 different personalities. And
I mean, she kind of says that.
Yeah, so Moon Knight is the protector of nighttime travelers, and then there's also the hunter and some other aspect, and she embodies the hunter aspect, I think, and she ends up stealing Khonshu's blessing. She pretty much takes his powers, which again, I'm not sure if Moon Knight ever has powers. That's another kind of fun thing about the character is sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. He clearly
it seems like the show, not to get off topic, but it seems like the show he will have powers of some kind.
Yeah, that's one complaint I had is the show just seems to just go in on it's magic and he has powers. Yeah, and that's kind of it. They don't seem to be doing the is it real, is it not thing so much.
Although it's more like what's happening when my brain is turned, when I'm not me kind of thing. Anyway, she says you cycle through these 4 aspects and your brain struggles to define what has happened to you. It seeks to apply identities to them. So he has aspects of who he is based on the fact that he was brought back to life by Khonshu.
Yeah.
And then because of that, he's applying a different identity to it. He doesn't actually have dissociative identity disorder. But I guess I'm yeah, but that's just her analysis. It doesn't necessarily mean that's not true or that's true or not true at all. Especially in the Lemire run, it seems like that's obviously true. He's very messed up, but
well, they talk about the fact that in the Lemire run, again, I kind of read through the entire run, and it's revealed in that run that Khonshu's been messing with Marc's brain since he was a kid. And Stephen Grant was his first alternate.
Yeah, he was a
personality. So the idea is that does he have dissociative identity disorder already, and Khonshu took advantage of that, or is the fact that
that's what the Lemire run kind of implied. They were your brain was weak, and therefore quote unquote, and therefore that's what enabled him to latch on to him or whatever.
Right, and also just from
which is interesting. Anyway,
from a macro standpoint, though. staying on the topic of Khonshu, their relationship is so random, and you can't keep
very weird.
Sometimes Moon Knight is in perfect alignment with Khonshu, and it seems like Khonshu is helping him with his mission. Sometimes Khonshu wants to steal Marc's body, and he's the villain.
Yeah, like there was the Khonshu, like in the sleep issue, he went into the empty room and he's like, "I know you can hear me, Khonshu. Put me to sleep." And it's like the next panel is black. Yeah. I'm like, well, obviously he's there helping him. And then at other times you're just like, are you on his side? I don't understand, kind of thing. Like,
well, it's
there's
weird
the creepy part in the end of that issue 1 where after he talks to the therapist, he like walks into his weird, I guess, empty mansion, and he sits down in the chair, and then he's just like pulls his mask off, and Khonshu's there, and he just goes, "You are my son," and then that's it. Like, you're like, what is happening? I don't understand.
Yeah, but Khonshu, interesting character. I guess he's almost as haphazard and random as Moon Knight. And that's one of the interesting things that they kind of delve into at the end of this run is that he also has 4 personalities. So Moon Knight has 4 personalities and Khonshu has 4 personalities, because they reveal in this run that he has other champions, and one of his champions is the Hunter, and he's like the boogeyman that lives under kids' beds, and he's been eating these kids and killing them.
What?
Khonshu won't give Moon Knight permission to go after the monster. He won't help him, and that's when Moon Knight finally kills the monster. The monster says, "Khonshu, why have you forsaken me?" or something along those lines. And so, it's just Khonshu is sometimes his protector, sometimes the villain. Also, I kind of in the TV show is playing with this. I think Khonshu sometimes talks like he's a elder being of reality, like a god, and sometimes he talks like a 16-year-old kid. They'll sometimes argue, and the way they'll write his dialogue is pretty funny when you think about the fact that he's supposed to have existed for thousands, or I don't know, millions of years. I guess they're aliens from the other void.
But I think that goes into, because Khonshu also sort of has DID. Like, he has these different aspects of his deity, and that kind of are different personalities in Alien.
Yeah, that's kind of why I don't buy what the woman is saying, or the psychiatrist is saying at that point.
Well,
she's saying he doesn't, but I'm like, what you're describing is that he does. He's applying different identities to different aspects of his life, and he doesn't remember what's happening while he's the other identity.
I think what she's saying is you don't have DID in the sense of you are a normal human who is seeing made-up people. I think more what she's saying is those made-up people are Khonshu's powers, or like I think she's legitimizing kind of the mystical nature of these different personalities, and that's why she says you don't have DID.
But more she also says you just have like regular brain damage, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was pretty much.
Anyway,
what I would say, it was pretty much just her saying, "I full on believe that Khonshu is a real thing, and you're his champion, and I want to be the champion," as opposed to being like, "You're actually crazy. Khonshu's not real." That kind of thing. I think that's their whole character.
Yeah. Right. Okay. All right.
But
we got to the bottom of that. What were you going to say about 5? 5 was great. By the way.
5. 5 is so it's a daughter of a mob boss that gets kidnapped, and she's in a building where Moon Knight basically just goes here, and it's almost like a video game. Also reminded me of the episode of Daredevil when he fights all those guys in the staircase. But did y'all?
My literal notes are little girl kidnapped, Daredevil hallway fight.
Yeah,
that's all I got.
Well, also it was.
Well, bizarre. It's also. This came out before Daredevil, but there's a movie called The Raid. True. I don't know if you've seen it,
Raid,
but this issue is basically lifted from The Raid. It's the same building. Yeah, it's the same building with like stairways going up and like kind of a central balcony area, and it's basically what that movie is, like a police force video gaming their way up the building and finding bad people. It's actually if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend it.
It's a very good movie.
It's one of the best martial arts movies I've seen in a long time.
I've never heard of it.
There's also the sequel also has insane fight scenes. They're really good.
I really like this is one of those issues though, and it kind of goes back to issue 1 when he like flicks the moonerang at the bad guy. he has this tendency to just kind of like fling those aside, and they just like bounce and go like into horrible play. Like he flicks it into somebody's fingers as they're firing a gun, and like he flicks one up like as he's running up the stairs. He just has like two fingers kind of like flicking upwards, and it goes like right up the guy's jaw, like out his mouth, like the look of it. And I was like, that's fucking brutal. Like there was just so many little things like that. I'm like, I love how he uses those. One of them, he has it in his hand and he blocks a bullet. Yeah, that was fucking awesome. There's some really cool stuff with that.
One guy's running down the stairs at him, and Moon Knight throws it into his foot, and it sticks his foot on the stair, and the guy falls forward. And you just have to imagine like when the foot ripped off the stair, like it just looks so painful. But the one note I wanted to make about issue 5, well, 2 notes. As he goes up the stairs, he's fighting random mob type people, and then all of a sudden, like a professional wrestler with pink belt and pink boots, like tattoos, comes out and fights him. And then he goes up to the next level, and it's a guy like in a purple suit with golden knives. And I didn't know where those character designs came from, because they're definitely more
very specific,
iconic, like limp and an eye patch type idea with those two, whereas the rest of them are just kind of normal guys. And then he just has these two
black dude with a weird haircut and like a purple suit with gold knives is very specific. Like it's like, what's going on here?
I just assumed maybe those were either from the old Moon Knight Rogues Gallery or some Marvel villains who are known somewhere. Maybe it is just a reference to Streets of Rage bosses or something.
I kind of like that. I kind of like that like video game aspect of it. It's like you get to level 2, this is the boss. You get to level 4, this is the boss. Like it kind of felt like a video game, like we've referenced.
Well, that's what times. But my last note,
it was kind of great.
Is after he saves the girl, there's still one guy left, and he's on the roof running away. And Moon Knight calls his like basically bat plane, moon plane. And the moon plane comes, crushes this man's body, and keeps flying.
Yeah, just smashes him into the roof. Keeps flying.
But here's where I get confused.
It's just this destroyed body.
Yeah, his body is obliterated. And then Moon Knight comes and talks to him and says, where you're going, tell them if they see me coming to run. And here's where I'm like, he's fucking insane. This guy's going to die. Is he talking about when he goes to hell, tell the demons there? Or is Moon Knight so crazy that he thinks this guy's going to survive and tell the criminal underworld this? He's not going to survive. His
body is literally like in pieces, and there's blood everywhere. Like the man's going to die in like 2 seconds.
So many breakthroughs in medicine the past 10 years. He could easily survive that.
I mean,
the little girl does call his mask his face, which is again like a
Batman type thing.
Yeah, that's a very.
But and also Rorschach, like he calls it his face.
You know what? That's probably a better parallel actually than Batman. Rorschach kind of was a
Rorschach actually does kind of fit this correlation a little bit, especially the Mr. Knight type character in a suit versus like the Batman type character in a superhero suit.
I mean, that issue had great action, but it's also, I mean, even going back to some of the Authority run, or maybe Ellis only did one run on Authority, I don't remember, but he's always done great kind of action work in comics. Yeah,
he is good at that. Yeah,
and nothing else. All right, and issue 6 is just, I mean, this is again, it's a good one-off episode or issue, but like it's really just a beat cop tries to become his nemesis and fucks up pretty bad at it, which is kind of awesome, kind of a fun one issue thing. He's like, I'm not just gonna be like that old Black Spector. I'm gonna be the new Black Spector and replace Moon Knight. And all I have to do is kill him first. And then he like blows himself up, and he's like, "What?"
I liked how
like, fuck yeah, and
it was a very It was sort of a very postmodern kind of twist on you spend the whole issue seeing this dude's arc of building himself up into being a worthy adversary, and then Moon Knight just snaps his finger. He's just done. That was it. It's already over like that.
Well, he sends 3 car bombs. Yeah, he sends like send on 3 phones, but the last one doesn't send, and then he like runs and hides behind the car, and then it blows up because it sends later. And I'm just like, you defeated yourself.
I don't know if did either of you ever read Despair by Nabokov?
No,
no.
It's really fun. Well, I'm kind of giving away the twist, but the whole book is this guy comes up with this insane plot to kill someone who looks like him to collect insurance and then be rich or whatever. And it's like a 200 page book of all the setup and finding the guy and getting everything ready. And then he does it, and it just ends with like the next day the cops are like, yeah, you killed this stranger, and we know he's not you, and like you're alive. Like,
and we know
it's
it was
just yeah, like the plot is just completely, all the planning, and they immediately know that like that is not you who's dead, and you clearly did it. But it just kind of reminded me of this whole buildup of, I'm going to become the Shadow, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do this and that, and then it's just you failed.
Yeah.
So one of the things, the conversation they have at the end after he blows himself up is basically like, people that love me suffer and die, and I never want anybody to love me, and that's why I always win. And that's kind of what Moon Knight says as he walks away. I feel like the real maybe purpose of this issue is to just be like, this is why he's alone now, and he doesn't use, any of his, he's not like contacting the girl he was once in love with. He's not like getting that French dude to help him out. He's not like, he's just by himself. Like, and I think that's kind of the purpose of this issue, is to set up for the rest of the arcs to come, that he doesn't want anybody to come help him because he doesn't want them to get hurt or die or anything like that. But it was a cool issue. Anyway, Lemire, let's get away from this toxic Ellis piece of shit.
Wait a minute. Speaking of toxic pieces of shit, does this pass the Bechdel test? The Bechdel test?
Oh yeah, I guess we should do it for each run.
Yeah, well, so this run, nope.
No.
Doesn't pass.
No, not at all.
Doesn't pass the lamppost test. Doesn't pass the anything test.
I mean, outside of the therapist.
Well, there wasn't a sexy lamp in this.
That's actually I guess in its favor, there just were no women in it.
There was no eye candy women for no other purpose than to be eye candy. Like, there was nothing like that in this.
Yeah, but I don't know if
but it's just a book about a dude, and there is like zero women in this book. The only time you see is in issue 6, when that pseudo nemesis that he like goes and like tries to hunt down the woman that he was like, what's her name, Monica? That's not Monica.
Miss Marlene or something.
Marlene, that's it. And she's like, I don't talk to him anymore. I thought I loved him. Blah blah blah. I'm not telling you anything else. Get out of here. Kind of thing. Like, am I under arrest? Then fuck you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for the 5 seconds she was there, I guess she was a strong character and not just eye candy. But like, that was it. And she was talking to a dude. So definitely no Bechdel.
Look, this Warren Ellis, you got to do better. Well, actually, don't.
If you didn't already know, Warren Ellis, you're toxic. Yeah.
Either don't write anymore or do better.
Oh, God.
But let's move on. Jeff Lemire.
Declan Shalvey, distance yourself from Warren Ellis.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Also, I mean, again, we should look up what else has he done, because he was good.
Declan Shalvey has done an independent thing called Hero Killers. He did the Thunderbolts for a minute, Fear itself, which was one of the big Marvel crossover events that I think Thor
vaguely recall that.
Thor dies and a bunch of other people get hammers, things of that nature. He did some stuff with Dark Avengers and Venom and Winter Soldier. I'm not sure what he's working on now, though.
Huh. I wonder if
I've never read
so much of that is touching on things that I may or may not have like read, or if I did, it was only a little. So now I'm kind of going like, I wonder if I noticed his art anywhere else, because I don't think I have. Well, he's good, and you should draw other things.
Yeah, I loved his work on this. Again, I had never, I don't think, ever read any of his stuff, but it's great. So
what do you guys think of Lemire?
Jeff Lemire, he's known for
talk about issues.
He's done a lot of independent stuff. Sweet Tooth is probably what he's maybe most known for. Which
it's a Netflix show now. So
he did a run on Animal Man back in the New 52, which
I loved that.
Yeah, that was fantastic. With his
also the art, and that's really good. I don't remember who drew it, but I loved it. Well, some of it, he doesn't do every issue, and he's in and out a lot. But like, for when he's there, it's like, oh, that's so good,
He has a creepy kind of horror sci-fi one called Gideon Falls too. That's not bad.
Okay,
that's a pretty good comic.
And
Lemire, I mean, not the artist of Animal Man, Jeff Lemire.
Greg Smallwood is the artist on Jeff Lemire's, at least the first 5 issues, and he's known for the Punisher.
Well, there's 2, right?
I think the artist changes up a bit after the 5th, but I want to say Smallwood the covers, and I think he also does the 2 different. I think he's the only artist on the first 5 books. So when they're in the other void,
so he's doing the 2 different art styles. And if Smallwood did both of those versions, actually, you know what? I can see in the cartoonier, quote unquote, not Dream World stuff. All right, it's not as scratchy and pencily versus clean, I guess is the better way to describe that. you can see it's sort of the same facial structure and stuff, like the way he's drawing his face and stuff. So it probably is him. That's really good.
I think
And
it is just him. Yeah.
if he's doing both styles, that's really cool. I mean, not a lot, not that a lot of people aren't capable of that, but I mean, like, good job. Because I didn't notice. I was like, oh, this is probably two different artists. I just assumed. Good work, Greg Smallwood, because you did a good job. And they look, more artistic, I guess, pages look really, really good. And the more cleaned up versions of panel by panel storytelling also look really, really good. So good work.
Let's zoom out a bit. So this run in general is pretty different than the Ellis one. It is not one-off issues. It's kind of a contained narrative. It's very sort of introspective into Marc's DID and kind of about him in his mind working things out. When we get to the end, I mean, I have some problems, I guess, with the way it's represented that you can just like believe in yourself and overcome a mental illness. But we can get to that part in the end. I thought that was kind of a strange.
Well, we can also go back on maybe he's not actually mentally ill, and it's like aspects of Khonshu.
Even if in the literal story there are aspects of Khonshu, there's definitely thematic content about DID and
sure, yeah, absolutely,
multiple personalities.
100%. Yeah,
so I think you're still kind of sending that message that, oh hey, we can just align on goals and work together and be a whole person. And I don't. That's kind of a weird message to get with this, but we can talk about that more at the end. But that's kind of an overview of this run as opposed to Warren Ellis.
Warren Ellis's run, it seemed to be that his insanity was a little bit more subtle. How he would communicate with people was very bizarre. His fighting style was very vicious. He's talking to a person that's clearly going to die after he crushed him with his, ship, as if the guy's going to survive. Like, it's a little bit more subtle, where I think Lemire's run really goes into the hallucinations that can accompany DID and how you have a hard time distinguishing reality from fantasy. It was more like Marc Spector was a rational person in this storyline, and he was dealing with a conflict of whether what he was seeing with his eyes was real or not. It kind of seemed like you could put any superhero like thing in that situation, and they would react similarly as Marc Spector did. Marc Spector was making.
By the way, that's what Mark S stands for in Severance, and he's going to open a door. It's going to be an Egyptian pyramid. Oh. It's all a trick. It just ties into Moon Knight.
Oh, that's a good idea. So Severance is the Apple Plus prologue to the Disney Plus Moon Knight series.
Yeah, to the Disney Plus show. It's all going to end with him being Marc Spector.
That would be brilliant.
It's our first crossover. It makes no sense. Anyway, moving on. What do you guys think about this arc overall? I guess we never really didn't do our overall Moon Knight takes, but we can interrupt to do it now. And I guess not just for this arc, but like Moon Knight as a character, I guess, both arcs. Like, what did you...
I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan. It's too bananas for me to appreciate, I guess. I just... Not that there isn't room for comics to not simply be about superheroes and be about different stories and different people. Like, that I get. But in a mainline Marvel superhero comic, I kind of want to get some superhero and not so much like weak kind of. So in Lemire's run, he basically is a normal human. He's not even that good at a fighter. He's just kind of trying to survive the labyrinth of his own mind, which again, as a comic is fine. But I just, from a superhero comic, I kind of want to get some level of action and enjoyment and like escape and that kind of thing. And I don't feel like the Lemire run really gave me that.
But the Ellis run kind of did, right?
Yeah, the Ellis run did. I mean, for surface level action, you definitely get that. And Mr. Knight is...
So for us just dipping our toes, I kind of agree with Al. I think for us just dipping our toes into Moon Knight, it seemed to me like the Ellis run was a little bit more... Again, not that I don't enjoy Lemire and like what he was doing with the book, but also not knowing the character very well. It was a weird, because the only time I have seen him is in like the Avengers or stuff like that. So it's like seeing that normal superhero-y like type Batman type character and then reading this book was like kind of like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Like, I guess, I mean, I knew sort of what I was going into when we got into this, but like at the same time, I'm like, I think it's just that. It's like, it needs a little bit more balance between eventually I would like to be told what is real, you know, and I just felt like I never got there. And granted, I didn't read the whole thing, but like it just felt like I'm like, it's still a question mark. Like not that didn't resolve anything.
I don't know if it's a Lemire staple because earlier, Patrick, you mentioned his Animal Man run. And I had a similar thing there where Animal Man sort of never does anything. Like his daughter is more powerful and actually achieves things. And Animal Man is very kind of weak and ineffectual in that run.
Yeah, he's kind of the background almost.
And
like,
again,
he's just like trying to keep up.
I don't want to sound like, well, I have to have the adult white male be the hero, but I don't know. It just feels weird to not be given that in that person's comic book, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So this was my first kind of deep dive into Moon Knight. And based on these two runs, I also skimmed through the Bendis run and I've been reading different articles about it. He seems to be a drastically different character from run to run. And that's normal for a comic book character to be different from, this is Grant Morrison's take on the X-Men. And this is what Chris Claremont's take was on the X-Men. And in the different runs I read, he seems just like a drastically different person, like drastically different. So, I mean,
it seems like they're like every new art or writer is just trying to like figure out who he is and trying to tell a more interesting story than the last, which is not a bad thing, but it's also lacks consistency. And I'm just kind of going like, I don't understand what I'm reading right now.
There's just a lot going on with Moon Knight, and he's got DID and they really focus on his mental health, but it just seems like there's so much all at once with this character. You're dealing with Khonshu. Is Khonshu real or not? There's Ammit and Anubis, and he's in the other void, and they're aliens and they're gods, and he's also got 4 personalities.
Yeah.
It just,
I think some of that might have been like us not understand, like kind of what I was saying with the side characters, like in the Lemire run, like I don't know enough about it. Like if it was a Batman run and this was a Batman run and he was like quote unquote crazy, I'd be like, well, he's not crazy. And that the reason he's talking to Alfred and Robin, like clearly this isn't real. And like, we'll get to the, this isn't real part soon and I'll figure everything out. But like not knowing enough about him made it more confusing. And it didn't necessarily make it less enjoyable. It just made it like, I have no connection to any of these deep cut characters they're pulling out. Like, so there's a lot of that going on too.
His alter egos and personalities too are just, it's bananas. He's a like a 70s cab driver and a Playboy TV producer. It's just, and he has a Frenchie Duchamp is his helper. And it's bananas. All of it's bonkers. Like it's not a modern
Alfred
cast.
Pennyworth,
Yeah, but it's just, it's weird reading this. Again, if we'd grown up with this character and known it forever, maybe it would make more sense. But it's weird in 2022 reading about a cab driver, TV producer, Playboy, and Frenchie Duchamp. It just seems really like period
and random homeless guy Crawley and like
not modern.
Yeah. Random woman in a diner who chooses to like stay in her diner.
Yeah,
like,
that was.
What's happening?
It is a strange. It is really a bizarre cast of characters in this book.
Yeah, it was odd that all of Moon Knight's supporting characters were also inside of the mental hospital illusion that he was in at the beginning of the Lemire's run. It didn't really. I didn't understand why the villains would capture his friends, because his friends are the ones that help him break out of the mental institution. It didn't. And this is just, Joe, going back to what you kind of made a point when you were giving your overall take, that he's been around since 1970. Is Khonshu real or not? Because if you're going to make this a cohesive story, the fact that we're still debating whether or not Khonshu's real is kind of ridiculous. We should have an answer by now. You can't tease.
Well, I think the overall takeaway is that he is real.
Right.
I mean, I think you're supposed to.
But there's still, I still feel like the mythos of the character is still mired in this conceit of, maybe he's crazy,
and that's kind of why I'm like, I like that. I like that for a time, but eventually, I want that to pay off in like some sort of concrete way, whether it's wrong or real or not real, it doesn't matter. Like if it's not real, that's great, but like he's just a lunatic running around New York beating people up, thinking he's doing all this crap with Egyptian gods. That's fine if that's the end of the story, but like, there's no like real resolution there, and I'm just kind of going like, I don't understand if I'm supposed to take away from this. Like,
yeah, you can't keep doing. It's like if Friends was still on now on like season 45, and Will, Ross, and Rachel hook up. We don't know. It's just that you can't keep doing the same thing for that long. Like at some point,
you have to tell me.
You have to pick a lane and be like, okay, it's real, and you know.
Eventually, you have to tell me how he met his mother.
So yeah, I like the character, but if Marvel's gonna really try to make this guy a big name character, they're gonna have to figure something else out. And I will say that the TV show, just based off the pilot episode, seems like they've kind of figured it out a little bit. Whether or not we're gonna like it or not,
I was actually gonna say the same thing.
It does seem like they just picked the lane.
Yeah, it feels like it feels like the show kind of like took aspects of all these quote unquote good story arcs from Moon Knight's run and kind of just went, well, let's smash all this together, sort of, and kind of like come up with a cohesive story. So, granted, there's only been one episode so far, and we'll cover Moon Knight Disney Plus when it's all over, I'm sure. But like, whether or not like, so I guess it's too early to tell. But from the first episode, it seems like they have a thought process and like, or like what they're deciding to do with the character and how they're going to handle the split personalities kind of thing.
Yeah. I do have some bad news for Jeff Lemire. Also fails the Bechdel test. All 14 issues fail the Bechdel test.
Yeah, again, it was supposed to be a cohesive story, but I didn't truly understand. It gets really bizarre. There's like a space pilot new version of him from the future that is helping them as well.
I kind of liked that. That section, the art was very kind of almost 80s French comic booky kind of. I kind of enjoyed that aesthetically.
I just didn't understand where it came from. But
well, in the end of this first 5 issues, though, like he, I don't know, confronts the Moon Knight character that is basically Khonshu while he's Mr. Knight, and then he ends up like jumping off the side of the pyramid and just breaking his body, and he's like sitting there in blood and sand, and then he wakes up as
Stephen Grant,
Playboy, Steve Grant, and then like that's and it says the end question mark, and I'm just like, what the fuck, like, so he was asleep the whole time, like that wasn't anything, that was all in his brain, like he's still. And granted, I didn't read past that. But it's just like
still in the mental institution. I keep thinking of movies like what was that one, Shutter Island, where it turns out that Leonardo DiCaprio was hallucinating the whole time. I feel like we've seen that motif in so many movies that having to read through it, where it's like,
it's a little trite,
what's not. Yeah, I'm like, I've seen this before. I actually don't care. Lemire.
I don't mind the mystery, Alessandro, but tell me the end of the mystery.
I don't know if it's Lemire or Lemire. I don't know.
It's Lemire. It's Lemire because I Googled it, and a fan of Lemire was posting her. She bought his newest trade paperback, and she kept saying it Lemire, so I'm assuming it's Lemire.
Why don't we just call him Jeff? Lemire. And that way we don't get it wrong.
So Jeff,
so like what I said in the very beginning of this episode, it's Lemire.
Okay, so Jeff, you made a good point, Patrick, of where that whole conceit of is it in his head, is it not, what's real, what isn't, really breaks down because we know it's real. This is a Marvel comic book of Moon Knight. We know it's real. So we have to go through 14 issues of is it, isn't it, kind of reconciling that when we sort of know like this is real. And that's kind of really a weak point.
There's never that concrete like, and that's the end of the story arc. He's really just Moon Knight and everything's fine kind of thing. Like there wasn't like that resolution.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a very interesting direction to take the character when they go back to the idea that Khonshu has those 4 aspects and one's the hunter. And they do play with that idea with the monster in their bed eating children. But what if that was one of Moon Knight's, like what if one of the personalities is Moon Knight, the superhero, one is a super villain? You could do a lot with that. And that's why I'm saying, again, there's a lot going on. There's so much to explore with the dissociative identity disorder, but there's also so much, I don't know shit about the Egyptian gods. Like they're the one pantheon that you don't really see them adapted too much in media. I've seen Greek gods, Roman gods are essentially Greek gods. They're the ones that I know back and forth, but
if you want to see Greek gods, Snyder Cut of the Justice League has the most perfect.
By the way, I was going to mention that Moon Knight, he's cut like from marble. Like he's like a 9.
I'm not even going to respond to that.
On the Snyder Zoo scale. Have you seen when he wakes up as Stephen Grant and he's in bed? Man, he's ripped.
Is he?
No, I don't even want to address that.
I will say,
I just want people. If you want to see a super ripped Zeus who looks like he's an action figure, watch the Snyder Cut.
And Alessandro's not exaggerating. We all know that, Al. Every time I see that guy, I forget how massive he is. Every time I see him, and especially if he's
it's disturbing.
Next to other people,
it's disturbing.
Yeah, he's enormous.
And by every time you see him, you mean every time Al texts us a picture of him?
Well, his are what gets me are his. I don't know if there was post-production CGI or something, but the way his arms look is I mean, literally unreal. They do not look like human arms.
Alessandro,
they look like an action figure arms.
Most people have a bicep and a tricep. He has a bicep and a tricep and a quadricep and a quintuple. There's so many different parts of his arm. It just keeps going. It's insane.
I'm relatively certain that the size of my arms and shoulders and chest is equivalent to like one of his forearms. Like my entire abdomen is just like his forearm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, enough about Snyder Zeus. We all love him.
Yeah. One note before I keep forgetting to bring it up. Both the art going back to Declan Shalvey. Greg Smallwood did the covers for these. And issue 5 might be one of my favorite covers. It's the one where Moon Knight is pulling the mask down, but it's his like human face.
Oh, but it's
that's great. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's
loved that. Loved that cover.
I actually really like. I know it's silly, but like the when he first kind of breaks out in the mental institution and he like, I don't know, puts a pillowcase on his head and he's running around with a sheet for a cape and stuff like that. And he just, that one cover of him like fighting is just really good. That weird look for Moon Knight was like, this is pretty good. Makes me think of Batman a lot. I know they're trying really hard to make him not Batman with the DID stuff, but like all I'm like is just another Batman story. Even no matter how in depth this got, I was just like, it just seems like Batman.
Yeah, no, the Batman parallels are very hard to overlook.
I kind of can't break. And again, it's because I'm a fucking psychotic Batman fan, so like obviously my brain won't be able to.
So the original,
but like I can read Daredevil and have fun reading Daredevil, and I don't think like, oh, a street level character jumping around on rooftops. You know, like for some reason, Moon Knight, I'm just like, I can't. Like it's just Batman.
So the original writer Doug Mensch, who did, or I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but who first started Moon Knight, had like a big run on Batman. He kind of made his bones on Batman. I don't, maybe some very wise.
Maybe 99% of that character trickled over.
Yeah, well, I just mean maybe that was also the point. Like maybe some super intelligent, creative editor at Marvel was like, "Why don't we just make our own Batman?"
And that happens all the time. And like the fact that they're trying to separate that now, or what I mean now, but like in the last like, I don't know, 15, 20 years of comics or whatever. Good job. You know, like bravo to you trying to be like, hey, we ripped off Batman like in the 70s, so let's like make it less like that and go in a weird direction.
The one big difference in the two of them is Moon Knight, he doesn't communicate with words. He is very violent and he is very aggressive. And
I think that came across more in the Ellis run for sure, but like, like the brutality of like Moon Knight was definitely on a level above Batman, a typical Batman. Not Snyder
but
Batman.
It might just depend on the author too. Like maybe some other Moon Knight authors don't make him as violent. I mean, in the Lemire run, he gets tackled by hospital orderlies pretty easily.
Well, those end up being not just hospital orderlies though.
Or are they?
If you believe or are they?
Because we don't know. It's been 50 years. We don't know.
Do they have alligator faces? We don't know.
We don't know.
Anyway, recommendations, guys.
based on everything I know of the Moon Knight character, it just didn't really flow that well. And so I don't know if I'd actually recommend the Lemire run. And then I have a hard time recommending the Warren Ellis run
for other reasons
you said. But I am getting the impression that this might be one of those instances where the MCU has taken a character who's recognizable, but no one really knows much about, and they are going to
like put their own spin.
Yeah. And I think it's
and that might be the best spin of all, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. And so going on that, I feel like that's a pass for you, Patty.
Well,
it's a pass for me. I would say don't read Moon Knight. I would almost say, like, just watch the show and, like, enjoy it for what it is. Like, don't read Moon Knight. Like, it's complicated and weird, and unless you have time to read, like, way more than we read, which was a decent chunk, unless you have that time, I would say, like, and also I don't know what you would get out of it at the end. Like, so it's a pass for me on a recommend. Like, I can't recommend the book.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's also I'm also a thumbs down. I was honestly a little disappointed because I like Jeff Lemire a lot. Like, I love Sweet Tooth, like Gideon Falls, also like the Animal Man run. What I read about his work on Moon Knight seemed interesting, so I was kind of excited to read it, but just wasn't for me. Same with the Ellis run, like, had some good action and fun moments, but you can get that in other comics. I wouldn't really go out of my way to read up on old Moon Knight and get caught up on the character. I just not a huge fan of it. And the DID aspect, I think, is interesting and kind of could be handled well. I just don't think either of the runs really dealt with it in a way that was so interesting. I mean, if you compare it to it's not at all the same thing, but just talking about mental health, like the way Tom King handled depression in Mr. Miracle.
Yeah.
And you want to compare that to how DID is handled in, well, forget the Ellis run, but in the Lemire run, I just don't think it's kind of on the same level of of kind of nuance and depth there.
It seemed like it was tackling that issue on the surface, you know.
I would be interested to see where Tom King would take a character like Moon Knight. It just, I think with the Lemire run, it was a lot of showing you what dissociative identity disorder could be like with the hallucinations and not being able to distinguish what reality is, but you didn't really get it. It's almost like, I think with DID, you probably have to get the perspective from his friends that are around him, where all of a sudden he's Marc Spector, and then all of a sudden he's Stephen Grant, and then all of a sudden. So yeah, I don't know. It's a shame because I feel like there is a great story to tell there, but these
but maybe Moon Knight is not really the best place to tell that story. I honestly, the character, and I know we've mentioned this before, but the bizarre cast of characters around him, his personalities, just not very interesting. I don't know what to tell you about a Batman who's a producer and a cabbie and knows a diner lady and Frenchie Duchamp. It just seems out of time, like out of place. And
his name's Jean-Paul.
Doesn't he literally go by Frenchie?
He goes by Frenchie.
Yeah, he does.
Quote unquote Frenchie Duchamp. I mean,
he's also gay, and he's in love with Moon Knight. And that's why he supports him throughout all these years. But
that would have actually, honestly, I would have liked to explore that more than what they did explore. That would have made the character more interesting than what we get in either of these runs. But
this is a 3-way pass on Moon Knight.
Well,
failed the Bechdel test
from the Mobius couch.
Anyway, don't worry about reading up on Moon Knight if you haven't. Just forget it. Forget it. People at home, forget Moon Knight.
If you're worried about it, stop worrying about it. Just watch the show. Just watch the show.
Just watch the show. They're probably gonna handle it better. We'll see.
Probably.
That's it. We're done. So 3 thumbs down.
Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see everybody next time.
Take care. Good journey.
All right, we're done. That's it.
Do we have sign-offs?
No, I good journey is my new not salutation. That's the opposite. It's my goodbye.
It's your new sign-off. Yeah.